Hi, my name is Beth Noveck. I'm a professor at the NYU Tannen School of Engineering and the director of the Governance Lab. As we discussed in our intro video on public entrepreneurship, the ability to adopt new technological innovations for governing, especially to use technology to collaborate with others, demands, first and foremost, the ability to define the problem one is trying to solve. Although it seems obvious that we need to define the problem, most of us, if we're honest, aren't very rigorous in defining the problem and identifying its root causes, preferring instead to jump right to the solution and start lobbying for its implementation. Who doesn't want to launch a new website or spearhead a new policy or create a new financing mechanism? But when we fail to define the problem adequately, we end up pursuing solutions that, no matter how innovative, don't work. Let me give you an example. Recently, I talked to a government official who was developing a program to reduce school absences in his city by sending text messages to parents to remind them that school attendance was mandatory. He was excited about behavioral insights, or so-called nudges, and wanted to apply what he had learned about leveraging human psychology to solve the problem. But the solution assumed that the problem was that parents were failing to supervise children, and to quote him, taking their children to Disneyland on vacation during the school year, when there was no evidence to support this definition of the problem. In fact, the children who were not going to school, first, were concentrated in one part of the city. Second, they did not necessarily have parents who were present in the home. And third, their failure to go to school had more to do with economic need to work than going on holiday. Thus, the project was doomed to fail. Becoming an effective public entrepreneur is not simply about knowing how to use big data or the technologies of collective intelligence or social media, but starts above all with the hard work of defining the problem. Thus, our goal in this short introduction is to do two things: explain why problem definition matters, and two, introduce a process for defining the problem. So why is good problem definition essential? At GovLab, we know both from our research on open innovation and crowdsourcing, and from our own work coaching thousands of public entrepreneurs and graduate students, that the skill with which a problem is defined is the single most important factor in finding workable solutions. The world faces enormous challenges, from global warming to economic inequality, and we need more people to work in the public interest on stuff that matters. And there is value to articulating ambitious and specific problems to solve that will improve the world. While issues are compelling, they are too broad to be actionable. It's not possible to achieve measurable progress without a clear understanding of the problem to be solved and its root causes. Only stating the issue, global warming, lack of trust in government, congestion, leads to paralysis. But articulating a specific problem enables action. The most powerful driver of innovation is explainability, namely being clear about precise goals rather than jumping to solutions. The more accurate the explanation of assumptions, the more rapid the process of innovation. Done right, problem definition is going to enable us to crystallize opportunities where progress can be made within larger, seemingly intractable problem areas. It can allow us to develop solutions that are narrowly tailored to addressing the problem, give us a more informed understanding and brainstorming about the solutions that are feasible and relevant. Also, a more accurate analysis of the theory of change, better mapping of the problems that various actors are working on, to allow and enable us to avoid a duplication of efforts. And also more compelling job descriptions that are going to attract better candidates because they describe problems to be solved rather than vague titles. Above all, by defining the problem, we make collaboration possible by explaining to others what we are trying to accomplish. Whether one seeks help from a colleague, a university professor, or a member of the public, asking others to help depends upon doing more than surfacing an issue or arguing for a solution. Collaboration depends upon precise and compelling problem definition. So what is problem definition? A problem definition is a clear, specific, and most important, actionable description of a real-world challenge. A good problem definition is not the same thing as a broad issue area, such as the spread of Zika, nor is it a solution to be implemented, such as an online community or a website or a new nonprofit or a data analytics tool. Although Zika and other pandemics might be a very compelling issue, they are not in and of themselves an actionable problem. Although relevant solutions might end up taking advantage of new tools or require the creation of a nonprofit, describing the solution does not tell people what the thing is to be solved and how they can help. Moreover, solutions are only impactful only insofar as they directly address the root causes of an issue, which is impossible to address without a problem definition. For example, the spread of Zika is caused by mosquitoes, which lay eggs in standing water, which accumulate due to the failure to pick up the trash. Thus, asking for help with Zika is going to yield few results, but a clearly defined statement about accumulating trash and identification of why the trash isn't getting picked up creates a clear pathway for others to participate and to do so in ways that are useful. And because the problem is both clear and important, there can be an incentive to collaborate. Problem definition has a long history of experimentation and scholarship in entrepreneurship, and it touches on related methods including design thinking and user-centered design and systems thinking. But its importance in the world of government, where we tend to focus on and reward solutions rather than problem identification, is just beginning to be recognized. So how do we define a problem? We'll spend much more time on this in our workshop, but in brief, problem definition is the process of articulating 1, a specific and actionable problem, 2, the root causes of the problem, and 3, finding those causes by using data and research and collaboration to support that understanding. Problem definition is a multi-stage process, and it always requires multiple drafts to learn. So how do I do it? Step 1. The first draft is designed to get us past a vague statement of the issue to articulate an actionable problem that lends itself to concrete solutions. So write down that issue that you are trying to solve in a few lines. Zika, global warming, corruption, crime, traffic, school truancy. But now write down 1 or more statements of the problem that underlie the issue in 1 paragraph per problem. Too many people driving into the city each morning for work is leading to congestion. Kids are not showing up for school, or small businesses are overburdened with paperwork. As a second step, we want to get past defining and describing the problem to articulating the root causes. So our second draft endeavors to add a description of the root causes to the definition of the problem, and invariably is going to lead us to redefining the problem itself. Linking cause to effect is going to require stripping back and laying bare assumptions. The better one can explain the problem, the better one can design a solution that addresses those causes. Why do you think the problem is actually happening? Can you make a list of all the root causes of the problem? List all of those potential causes. Again, let's take an example. The issue is school truancy and absenteeism. The initial statement of the problem focuses on kids not coming to school, but we don't know why they're not coming. What do we understand about the root causes? Are their parents taking them to Disneyland during the school year to get cheaper rates? Or are their parents absent? Or is coming to school less safe than staying home? Do they lack a way to get to school? Do they have to work instead of coming to school? Develop a hypothesis for the likely root cause. Write down why this is taking place. And try to repeat this 3 to 5 times until you arrive at a series of possible root causes. Now ask yourself, did I describe the problem at its most granular level? Can I break the problem down further into more specific root causes and write up 1 page about the problem? We have too many people driving into the city because people cannot afford to live in the city because real estate prices are too high because, and so on and so forth. Now ask yourself, why has the problem not been solved already? Does answering this question reveal anything new about the problem definition? Did you get stuck at some point in this process? Is that because you've arrived at the most granular and specific definition of the problem you can articulate? Or is it because you have gaps in your knowledge that you need to research? If so, write down the unanswered questions as you use the next step to answer those. In step 3, we need to identify those who are most affected by the problem. The public entrepreneur needs to understand the people most affected, their needs, and their incentives in order to describe the problem fully. Write down who are those most affected by the problem. Of course, at some point, everyone is always affected by everything, but try to avoid generic statements like the public in favor of a more granular description of those immediately impacted. For the truant children, who are they? Are the children evenly distributed, or are they clustered? What types of children do not come to school? Is it absenteeism most prevalent in specific schools and specific neighborhoods? When do they stay home? At what times of day? Or is it at specific times of year? In the case of public problems, those most affected might be both institutional and individual actors, such as the bureaucrat providing the service, as well as the citizen receiving it. Are there institutional actors who are implicated in addition to individuals? Relevant constituencies could include those people directly affected by the problem, organizations working to solve the problem, government entities responsible for policy in the area, community or social groups. If you could ask any one of these groups 10 questions to test your assumptions about the problem, what would those questions be? Write them down. Step 4. Building an evidence base. The fourth draft of our problem definition comes after some research with affected people and communities, with experts, at the library, and using data. It enables us to further sharpen our understanding of the problem. Public entrepreneurs must develop rapid result research skills, especially a knowledge of how to use data to evaluate the problem they're tackling. So once you've developed an initial problem statement to refine, we want to make sure, before we close, to just make a note about some special common pitfalls to be aware of. Perhaps the most common challenge and a constant temptation is to articulate a solution rather than a particular problem. For example, the problem is that we aren't using predictive analytics to spot the most frequent instances of a disease does not define a problem. Rather, explain the challenge of knowing where outbreaks occur due to the tendency among the population to avoid hospitals for specific economic or cultural reasons, and support with data and explain why it matters before you ever get to the solution or the tool. Challenges also arise when the identified problem is too broad to be actionable. For example, an initiative aimed at stopping buses from idling while passengers board is more actionable than an initiative broadly aimed at stopping climate change. Even if a problem is defined in a sufficiently granular way, a failure to articulate assumptions and root causes and to identify who is already working on the problem can introduce new challenges. When the problem solvers fail to map the system in which a problem exists and map the constituencies working on and affected by the problem, there is the potential for solutions to exacerbate other related problems or to lead to duplication of efforts already in place in government, civil society, or the private sector. Finally, it's difficult to know if a solution works if the problem is not accompanied by success metrics, especially in a government context where budgets are tight and resources only go towards efforts that can demonstrate success. Ensure that the problem you are seeking to address has a baseline against which to measure progress and a potential source of data to collect and analyze after implementation of a new solution. But above all, defining the problem is the best way to arrive at a definition of what success will be if we solve it. Thank you.